Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister and the team, for being here and offering some answers to some of these questions. I noticed on page 55 of main estimates, based on the total amount this year allocated versus last year, I believe there's a loss of around $57,000, I believe, a different change in revenue. Part of that would be revenue administration, which clearly outlines develop options for legislative amendments on tax administration. I know we have campaigned very hard on tax reform. We've brought forward ideas on the floor, motions on tax reform. In the meetings that we've had, we've pushed for tax reform. My understanding is your party also pushed for tax reform. And I guess what I'm wondering is, with tax reform being on the agenda, I would assume for this year, why would we have a decrease in the amount of revenue to accomplish that, as opposed to an increase for more resources to make that reform possible?
Through the chair to the member and leader of his party, I can give you all the numbers if you want. The variance in that, why it's gone down 57, was actually due to agency relations and corporate services, which dropped by $302,000. But revenue administration, which is what you were asking about, went from $5,437,000 to $5,536,000. So it's $99,000 more. It's actually gone up more. Where you see the 57 million less was because of agency relations and corporate services. Can I table this? Can I table this? The numbers if you want, but that's where it came from.
Thank you, Minister. I just want to be certain, and I want to word myself properly here. We've had a lot of promises, a lot of commitments, but we've also seen a lot of backtracking by the government, frankly. And I just hope this isn't another backtracking that we're going to see on tax reform, because it's imperative that this government understands that as a political party in a minority government that may only hold 3 seats, but I think has some significant influence, frankly, our patience is wearing out. And when we look at, the fiscal side of things, we want to make sure that the numbers presented in the budget reflect the commitments that the government made in making these changes and these reforms. So I guess I would ask, in thinking and in lockstep with the commitment of tax reform, is this government committing to allocating funds? Because let's face it, something like taxes is not an easy topic. It has very much complexities which affect people's lives. It affects business. It affects growth. And I think our tax system today it's just overbearing on everything. It's overbearing on the poor. It's overbearing on the middle class. It's overbearing on private sector growth. And that's why we are choking ourselves as a province because of our tax system. It's unfair in every sense. So the question I would ask is there funds allocated to accomplish the role of tax reform? And if there are funds allocated specifically for that role, approximately how much are we looking at?
To the member, we agree. We agree with the tax reform and the need for tax reform. There are 6 different platform and priorities for this year. Tax reform is one of them. We've already started it. Having said that, it's early days, but it will be out. It's due in September, the first phase of it. The first phase deals with status and issues and also comparisons. Phase 2 will start in April, and that's approaches for change as we get ready to change the tax system. And there are 10 people on that working group that I can get the salary amounts or thereabouts if you want to know the money that's invested in that. There are 10 people working towards it.
So, Minister, with the 10 staff members that you have for that group, I would hope that other organizations would be involved as well. I mean, I know we've played a critical role in bringing this issue to the forefront. Organizations like the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, all of us that have called for the elimination of the double tax, making sure that large corporate interests are paying their fair and reasonable taxes. So I hope that it expands beyond the 10 people into a broader scale to make sure that we get this right, because when you talk tax reform, you really only have one good kick at the can to get a full change to the tax system, as opposed to just the tweaks that we've had over the years with a little bit of an increase here, a little bit of a decrease there, which really does nothing to revitalize our province. I'm wondering as well, when we look at the numbers through finance, and we talk, the government talks about, balancing the books, which we certainly appreciate and admire in that sense. But my concern is we're not looking at where the real cost savings could be. The Auditor General has put out reports in the past that put things like corporate welfare, handouts to big corporate interests at around $243 million a year. I often wonder, and I don't know, Minister, if you can answer this or if it's the appropriate time to ask, but what part of corporate welfare is going to be cut back? Are we going to stop handing out to big business and instead take a portion of that to help the small businesses, medium businesses that are born and bred here in New Brunswick to be able to move forward? Is there anything in the plan, I guess, in terms of eliminating corporate handouts?
Member, you talked about eliminating corporate welfare. Corporate welfare mostly, or what you would term as corporate welfare, would be mostly coming out of ONB, Opportunities New Brunswick. They have had their budget cut by over $7 million. But I do want to remind the member, too, that for small business, we do have one of the best small business tax rates around at 2.5%. And because we passed on implementing the passive investment legislation from the federal government, we stopped that from rising. It's at 2.5%. If we would have implemented that federal passive income policy, then it would have gone to 14%. So we have help there. The small business investor credit is one of the really, really wonderful things out there, where it's a 50% tax credit. It's the best in the country. It really is amazing. So I'm hoping that more people will take advantage of that as well. We have some more legislation coming up. I guess I shouldn't speak about that just yet. But anyway, there's some good news in the future still for small business as well as larger. But that corporate tax rate is really good for small business. The investor tax credit, I think, is outstanding, and I think what we did with the passive income is very good. And took $7 million, a little better than $7 million out of ONB's fund that they would have used for the term corporate welfare.
Thank you, Minister. Through the chair, yesterday, as I was filling up my tank in the Ripples area, I spoke to a business owner that was one of the hardest working people that I know. Her and her husband built that business from the ground up. She works all day in one side of the business at the post office. The other day, in the evening, she works with the gas side of it and the retail in the convenience store. And the frustration she expressed is the frustration I hear among many New Brunswickers, small business owners across the province, where they just simply feel like there is no significant support there. And she came to me as her MLA saying, what is available to me as a small business owner in some way? And, even for us, sometimes it takes a lot of digging to get any real answers on programs. Speaking, again with finances, and it's all about shifting money around to make programs work and effective, is there anything allocated or any vision in place to simplify the process for assistance for the programs that are already here? And just as importantly, is there any new programs that are going to come out to help small businesses? Even things like, forgivable loans for upgrades to their business, for hiring on that extra staff. things that kind of, rather than giving the $9 million to places like TD Bank, which to me is unethical, taking the money and reallocating it to small businesses that are here, that have been here, that want to stay here. Is there anything in the financial estimates that would help in that endeavor, simplifying the process for finding the information as well as having the programs available in the first place?
Question, and not to slough it off, but you know what? OMB does have, they're coming up in one or two groups, along with small business and economic development with Minister Wilson. I think I'm going to have to shovel that to them because they are the ones that handle all the programs for small businesses, and I'm not versed on them all at this point. On finance, though, if you go to the webpage, or I can get you copies, or anybody copies if they want to give us a call, on our finance webpage, it gives a lot of the information on any of the tax credits that are available, and there are a few of them there. So, yeah.
No, I appreciate that, Minister, and I certainly understand, Opportunities New Brunswick being more detailed about the file. I guess what I was wondering was Opportunities New Brunswick doesn't have taxing authority. The province of New Brunswick does, and they have to come to you for the money. So I'm just wondering, on a large scale, I know you've cut in certain areas of Opportunities Brunswick, but nowhere near the $243 million a year on average that is given out. So I just wondering, on a large scale, what is this government's plans in terms of even possibly changing the mandate of Opportunities New Brunswick so that places like banks, failing companies like Sears, all these places that frankly the last thing they need is taxpayers' money. Is the Department of Finance have any vision or any desire to possibly change the mandate of Opportunities in Brunswick so that they focus on the small and medium-sized businesses, the businesses that are here struggling, to help get them through? I guess on a broader level, is there any changes to funding to Opportunities New Brunswick other than the cut that we've seen?
To the member and the leader of his party, through the chair, the mandate to change, or the vision to change OMB's mandate would come above my pay grade, but it was certainly one of the reasons we put in a Minister of Small Business and Economic Development was to address the issue. And to address it in a very significant way. And Minister Wilson, having worked for 20 years with the CFIB, is very well versed in what effects and what changes need to be made to small businesses. And you'd be hard pressed to find anybody more passionate about it than Minister Wilson is. So I trust that when she comes up, she'll be answering more questions. And I do trust that she is going to be making some amazing strides forward in that area. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister. I do think it's critical that we change the way we look at the private sector from a government aspect. Again, I know of companies that I've met with that have been in New Brunswick for years. One company in particular has been in my community for 15 years. They have over 100 employees, and they're looking to expand. And I would hope that this government would change the directive of Opportunities New Brunswick to make sure that it's these types of companies that are looking to expand can get some help that they need. Not a handout, but a hand up. Whether it's a interest-free loan that has to be paid back over time, something to help these small businesses cut through regulation, whatever it is. So I look forward to hearing more from the Minister of Economic Development on that as time goes on, but we will be watching that closely because I'm convinced that there is too many tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, frankly, that's going to big corporations, either through energy rebates, forgivable loans, grants, outright money to draw them here. And I think it's just frankly unethical in many ways to take from people that are struggling in their small business to give it to places like TD Bank. Just blows my mind. But anyhow, we're going to continue to fight against that and make sure the government's held accountable on it. I did see on page 59 there is a section in there as well about cannabis education